Well, I understand that last November you invited a team to come and teach drum circles, not for drumming or for performing, but actually for conflict resolution, leadership training, youth empowerment, and economic development. And I wanted to ask you, what gave you the idea that drumming could help people in northern Iraq?
About back in the early 90s, I went to a drum circle at a NAMM show in Anaheim. And there were a few hundred people in that circle. It was my first circle and my last experience, but it lasted for over a decade. And
you never forgot that feeling?
I never forgot that feeling. And I was looking for peace-building activities. When we talk conflict resolution, many people think of negotiations, mediation, arbitration. But the drum has dialogue and it has activity. And it's a form of communication and it's a form of healing. And most conflicts are coming from inner pain as well as external pain. We can see the injuries when somebody is hurt with an IED, which is a explosive device. We can see the leg amputated. But inside also the spirit and the mind is in deep pain. The drums have a vibration that I found back in the early 90s, 1991, that seemed to heal and to provide energy, positive energy. And so what I did, starting about 4 years ago, was study it in an Islamic context. Would it be allowed to have drums, as music is not always, entertainment is not considered allowed in the more traditional Islamic communities.
Sure, I can imagine. So you were checking if there was any religious resistance or that it would be violating some cultural norm.
Yes,
is that right?
And when the drums in the Quran and the Al-Sunnah would be, when they talk about drums, when it would be appropriate. And the Prophet, peace be upon him, said certain times, maybe at a wedding or for healing purposes. If it's for medicine, then it's good. So to go from the text, I went to religious scholars and imams, and I asked many of them, and I still continue to ask them, to open up a discussion on healing. In Iraq, there's several groups that use just the daf, which is allowed, and some kettle drums. And their premise is also for healing. So
right.
It was an all-go. I talked to many very traditional conservative religious leaders, and they, after discussing it and discussing the energy and the vibration and how it heals the blood pressure and the enzymes and stress, and conflict causes stress and high blood pressure, that yes, this can be done, and they're very interested.
So going back to what you said about peacemaking, exactly, can you define what peacemaking is as compared to conflict resolution and why the drum is good for peacemaking?
Yes.
You could look this way a little bit.
Okay.
Look towards us.
Conflict resolution or conflict mitigation, which is even a bigger umbrella, has several different sections or themes, and one is mediation or negotiation, which we mainly get from business. You hear about negotiations in business. There are other areas of conflict resolution. So if you think of it as an umbrella and tentacles coming out, peace building and dialogue are two other areas which are not as concentrated on. In the media, many times they say dialogue, or you hear people these leaders going into dialogue, but what they're actually doing is going into negotiation. And so
That's fascinating.
Very grassroots. I want something that's not academic. I want something that's practical, and that the grassroots, the regular people, can take it and do it. And it's like the commercial, just do it and experience, because we learn more from experience.
Absolutely. And I understand there's a lot of language barriers in Iraq. I mean, the people that you have the training spoke Kurdish, Sorani dialect, they spoke Arabic. And what was the result of using the drum as a language, as a common language for people that can't necessarily speak to each other in words?
For the first hour, there was no speaking. It was totally drumming. And then at that point, we opened up with English to Kurdish to Arabic. And as a result of that, at one point in the 5-day training, we wanted to separate the groups, right? And the Kurdish speakers and the Arabic speakers, and they refused to separate from each other. And so the bond was there, regardless of language, barriers, or anything else. The bond between the people were there. It was there and very strong.
What do you think made that bond?
It was the drum. It was the common language of the drum. And it was the healing. It was beginning the healing from the first hour through the days. And they would not stop. After the training, they would be on the bus or be in the hotel, and they kept going with the drumming.
Even without a drum? Just
Even
tapping
without a
on the-
drum, tapping on the leg.
It's hard to believe that people, these 38 people, could experience such a level of unity when you consider that they are from groups that would be enemies.
Yes.
I wonder what created that.
We picked a variety of people. We picked people from, one focus was on rehabilitation centers, therapists from rehabilitation centers, from 6 to 7 governance. So automatically we're looking at different people in different governance, concentrating on physical therapy. And the second was the youth, and also government officials participated, and then community groups, representatives. So each government in Iraq, there's 18 governance, and we work with 7 of them.
Wow.
Each has its own personality, and within the government are subgroups. And so we had an application. What we did want to make sure of for people attending is that they had a sincere interest in using drum circles for their community and for their organization or rehabilitation center, so that it would have a sustainability.
And tell us what's happening now. Like, what did you hear after the training finished? On the front lines, what was the scoop?
The first person was most traditional Muslim, and he went out the next day to an orphanage and did drum circles with orphans in near Baghdad. They did it in homes because they cannot even cross the street without being at risk. They did it in homes with children.
Oh, goodness.
So that was a start. The other was Kurdistan Save the Children, working with children's centers and youth centers, and also the rehabilitation centers in northern Iraq are using that for physical therapy and also to relieve stress.
And I understand you recently did a drum circle with your staff and had to do with the women empowerment.
Yes. I noticed in the first drum circle that the women, they were drumming, but they were not drumming as enthusiastically as the men. So I said that evening, the next day, we were going to have a women's only drum circle. And we took both men and women staff to beautiful waterfalls, very lush. And we sat on a large patio, and around 3 tables sat 21 women. And they really got empowered, and it took an hour, and after 30 minutes, they were more confident and very proud, and their faces were glowing. And at that point, after an hour, we gave it over to the men. We let the men use the drums, who equally, they saw what the women did, and they equally wanted that experience. And so they did another hour of drumming on their own. So.
And what has drum and drumming and facilitating drum circles done for you personally as a person who's working on the front lines in Iraq?
I see such a huge change, and in a place where there's a lot of conflict, and something that you might build, a school, may be blown up the next day, and it has. to see the change within people. And it doesn't take much money. It takes drums and it takes people. It doesn't take electric. It
It's
doesn't
affordable.
take water. It doesn't take a hospital building. It just takes people and a drum and a desire to heal and the desire to feel life again and to have hope again. And so that's, for me personally, that's to see that. I've done 250 projects, and this project was the most important project, the most impact, because it affected people's spirits.
I'm just going to add to that. You're done. Good job.
That was fabulous. Yeah, if you want to say.
I think that the significance of this project is it's just a first step in a trend that we're seeing. This was an international relief organization requesting a music-based intervention, not to perform or entertain, but to change the culture, to support the healing process of cross-cultural activities, of cross-tribal activities, religion. And I do see that music is the language of global diplomacy. That for a world that is looking at peacemaking techniques, music, sound, especially the rhythm, because the drum is so multicultural, the drum is so accessible, it's a great access point for all people, that I do see that this is going to be a tool for global healing, global conversations, peacemaking. I think also the significance is that when we analyze this and we ask the participants to give us an evaluation, they rated it highly enjoyable. So, I mean, we brought together people who could be enemies, and they actually enjoyed these 5 days together. People didn't want to end at the closing sessions. They didn't want to stop. There was a lot of emotion, even in a culture where you're not supposed to show emotion. I think for me, it's the biggest music therapy project I've ever done in my life. There was a lot of fear going into a war zone. We get a certain image of Iraq from our media. And once we walked through that image and let it go, what we met was the most generous, spirited people. And we didn't teach them anything. Really, we offered them this art form that allows space for everyone's own rhythm within a collective group. And what they showed us was some of their own traditional music. In fact, they wanted to share with us, this is the music of our people. Here's an Arab dance. Here's a Kurdish dance. They wanted to share that with us. So I don't think it's that the drum circle is the only piece of this puzzle. It was a combination of two things, cultural sharing and collaboration. Cultural sharing meaning we'll show you one of our songs. Please listen, we'll perform for you one of our songs. We'll share it. It was shared in an intention of join us, not sit still and watch. Come join us. And after each group got the chance to share and connect with each other's art form and language and musicality, then collectively we collaborated on new things. And I think that's the key to peacemaking, is the action, the collective action, the collaborative action of forming a mutually created art form in the moment, in the now, that serves the needs of that group. Okay. That's gorgeous. Look around the room while you do this.